Jade Monroe's hands trembled as she clutched her ultrasound photo, standing in the marble foyer of the penthouse she'd decorated with her own hands. 6 months pregnant, and Trevor was handing her divorce papers like they were a grocery list. "Sign them tonight, or I'll make sure you leave with nothing," Trevor said, his voice cold as the champagne he'd opened to celebrate with Sienna, the woman draped across his arm. The mistress wore Jade's favorite perfume, and that detail cut deeper than anything else. "I'm carrying your child," Jade whispered, but Trevor's laugh echoed off the vaulted ceilings. "That's your burden, not mine. Sienna doesn't want any reminders of you polluting our fresh start." He straightened his Rolex, the one Jade had saved for months to buy him. "You have 2 hours to pack. Security's already been briefed." What Jade didn't know was that 2,000 miles away, Lillian Ashford had taken her last breath in a San Francisco estate worth more than most countries' GDP. And the elderly billionaire's final words had been about the granddaughter she'd secretly protected for 29 years, the granddaughter currently being thrown out like trash. Jade had grown up believing she had no family. Her mother died when she was 11, leaving behind only a small insurance policy and vague mentions of complicated relatives who wanted nothing to do with them. She'd built her life on her own, putting herself through design school while working 3 jobs, eventually catching Trevor's eye at a gallery opening where her architectural sketches were displayed. He'd seemed like a dream then, successful, charming, interested in her ambitions. But marriage had slowly revealed the nightmare beneath. He'd convinced her to quit her promising career as an architect, claiming his tech company needed a proper wife who could host investors and make him look good. Jade had believed him because she'd been desperate to build the family she'd never had. Now, watching security escort her to the bedroom she'd shared with Trevor for 4 years, Jade realized she'd traded her dreams for a man who saw her as disposable. The rain hammered against the windows as she stuffed clothes into a suitcase. Sienna appeared in the doorway, examining her manicured nails with theatrical boredom. "Honestly, you should thank me," Sienna purred. "Trevor needs someone who can keep up with his lifestyle. Someone younger, more relevant. You were always too soft, too boring. I mean, who gives up a career to play housewife anymore?" She laughed, cruel and sharp. "Oh, and we're getting married here next Saturday. Try not to drive by and embarrass yourself." Jade wanted to slap the smirk off Sienna's face, but her daughter kicked hard in her belly, reminding her that she was fighting for 2 now. She held her head high until the door slammed behind her. The Starlight Motel on the edge of the city cost $48 a night. Jade paid for 3 nights with the emergency credit card Trevor hadn't found yet, knowing he'd cancel it by morning. The room smelled like mildew and defeat, but it was all she could afford. She collapsed on the bed and finally let herself break, sobbing into pillows that had seen too many broken people before her. Her phone was nearly dead, but when she plugged it in, it exploded with 17 missed calls from an unknown New York number. Before she could check the voicemail, the phone rang again. "Is this Jade Monroe, formerly Jade Ashford?" a cultured male voice asked. "Yes," Jade said cautiously, her voice raw from crying. "Who's calling?" "My name is Victor Castellano, senior partner at Castellano and Bright. I represent the Ashford estate. Ms. Monroe, I've been trying to reach you for 48 hours. Your grandmother, Lillian Ashford, passed away 2 days ago." The words made no sense. "I don't have a grandmother. My mother never mentioned any family." "Your mother, Diane Ashford, was estranged from Lillian for personal reasons before you were born. However, Lillian never stopped watching over you. She knew about your marriage, your pregnancy, and what happened tonight. Ms. Monroe, I need you to sit down for what I'm about to tell you." Jade was already sitting, but she gripped the phone tighter. "Just tell me. You're the sole heir to the Ashford estate. Your grandmother built the largest private equity and real estate empire in the Western Hemisphere over 60 years. The total value is approximately $400 billion. Everything, every property, every investment, every company, now belongs to you." The motel room tilted. "That's impossible. People don't inherit $400 billion. I assure you, it's very real. Lillian spent her entire life building this empire specifically to pass to you. She purchased properties under shell companies, made strategic investments, and created an infrastructure that could run independently. She wanted you to have choices she never had. Victor paused. Ms. Monroe, where are you right now? The Starlight Motel, Jade admitted, shame burning through her. Room 612. That ends immediately. I'm sending a car within 30 minutes. You'll stay at the Ashford Tower penthouse downtown, which you own, along with the entire building. We'll meet tomorrow morning to begin the transition. After Victor hung up, Jade stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The woman staring back looked hollow, broken. But somewhere beneath the tears and exhaustion, something else was stirring. Something that felt like possibility. Keep reading. The woman thrown away like garbage is about to discover she owns the ground her husband stands on. What she does next will shock everyone. The black Mercedes arrived 43 minutes later, driven by a professional woman named Helena who treated Jade like royalty despite her tear-stained face and wrinkled clothes. The Ashford Tower rose 72 stories into the night sky, dominating the skyline Jade had admired her entire life without knowing her blood had built it. The penthouse took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city like a kingdom, and fresh orchids filled crystal vases throughout rooms decorated with the kind of understated elegance Jade had always admired. On the dining table sat a leather folder embossed with her name in gold. Inside were photographs that made her hands shake. Her at age 5, playing in a park. At 11, crying at her mother's funeral while a woman in black watched from behind dark glasses. Her grandmother, she realized now. At 22, presenting her thesis project, the affordable housing complex that had won her a scholarship. Every milestone, documented with love from afar. At the bottom lay a letter in elegant handwriting. My dearest Jade, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you finally know the truth. Your mother made me promise to stay away, believing my wealth had corrupted everything it touched. I kept that promise, but I never stopped loving you. I watched you become exactly the woman I hoped you'd be. Strong, creative, kind. You chose love over money when you married, even when that man had nothing. You sacrificed your career when he asked, showing loyalty he never deserved. Now I'm giving you everything, not as a burden, but as a tool. Use this power better than I ever could. And remember, true strength isn't destroying your enemies, it's becoming so phenomenally successful that they become irrelevant. I love you always. Grandmother Lillian. Jade read the letter 5 times before sleep finally claimed her. Morning brought Victor Castellano and a team of advisors who spent 8 hours explaining her inheritance. The numbers were staggering: commercial properties in 6 to 7 countries, controlling interests in Fortune 500 companies, investment portfolios that influenced global markets. The infrastructure is designed to run with minimal oversight, Victor explained. But major decisions require your approval. You own everything from tech startups to luxury hotels, from pharmaceutical companies to renewable energy firms. A sharp-eyed woman named Priya Kapoor leaned forward with a tablet. There's something you need to see. Trevor Monroe's tech company operates out of the Silvercrest building, which you own. He's been leasing it at 30% below market rate through a shell company established by your grandmother 6 years ago. He thinks he owns his office space, but he's been renting from you the entire time. Jade's stomach dropped as Priya continued. You also own his apartment building, the warehouse where his company stores equipment, and you're the primary investor in the venture capital firm that funded his startup. His entire business exists because your grandmother quietly supported it, hoping he'd treat you well. He didn't. The irony was suffocating. Trevor had thrown her away thinking she was powerless, never knowing he'd been married to the heir of one of the world's wealthiest women. If he'd waited 3 more days, if he'd shown even basic decency, he could have had access to an empire beyond imagination. What about Sienna? Jade asked, her mind racing. Victor pulled out another folder. Sienna Cortez has been engaged 6 times in 9 years, always to wealthy men. Each engagement ended mysteriously before the wedding, but only after she'd extracted expensive gifts, trips, and loans that were never repaid. She's currently facing fraud charges from 3 ex-fiancés. She saw Trevor as her next target. Does she know his company is failing? Jade asked. No. Trevor's been hiding massive debts by moving assets and cooking the books. He's approximately 8 weeks from potential bankruptcy. Sienna has no idea she's about to marry a man whose business is collapsing. Jade absorbed this information, a plan crystallizing in her mind. Trevor and Sienna were getting married in 6 days at the penthouse, her former home, which public records still showed under Trevor's company's lease. But Priya's next revelation changed everything. "You also own that building," Priya said, satisfaction in her voice. "The lease violation when he moved Sienna in gives you grounds for immediate eviction." Over the next 5 days, Jade transformed. She met with boards of directors, learning the intricacies of her empire. She spoke with Lillian's longtime assistant, Naomi Chen, who shared stories of a brilliant woman who'd built her fortune through strategic thinking rather than ruthless destruction. "Lillian always said money doesn't change people, it reveals them," Naomi told her. "She wanted you to have this fortune because she believed you were already the person she'd spent a lifetime becoming." Jade also visited doctors who confirmed her pregnancy was healthy despite the stress. She met with architects at firms she owned, feeling a thrill when they asked her opinion on projects. This was the life she'd always wanted: designing, creating, building communities. Now she had the resources to do it at a scale she'd never imagined. By Friday, Jade had made her decision. She wasn't going to destroy Trevor, she was going to show him exactly what he'd thrown away, then walk away knowing she was better than he'd ever be. Keep reading. Tomorrow is the wedding. The abandoned wife is about to make an entrance that will change everything. The final act will leave you breathless. Saturday arrived with merciless sunshine. Jade dressed in an elegant emerald dress that accommodated her growing belly, and wore Lillian's diamond earrings, the ones Victor had delivered with a note saying they were saved for exactly this moment. Helena drove her to the penthouse at 1 o'clock, an hour before the ceremony. The security guard at the gate stepped forward to block them until Helena handed him a legal document. "This is Jade Monroe, legal owner of this property. She has every right to be here. If you attempt to stop her, you'll be charged with trespassing on her land." The guard's face went pale as he read the document and opened the gate. Jade walked through the front door she'd been dragged through 6 days ago. White roses and crystals covered every surface, expensive but gaudy, Sienna's taste exactly. In the kitchen, caterers froze when they saw her. "Mrs. Monroe," one gasped. "What are you?" "Don't worry," Jade said calmly. "I'm not here to stop anything. I just need to speak with Trevor and Sienna before the ceremony." She found them in the master bedroom. Trevor was adjusting his bow tie, and Sienna sat at the vanity where Jade had sat every morning for 4 years, her wedding dress hanging nearby like an expensive ghost. "What the hell?" Trevor spun around, his face flushing red. "How did you get past security? Get out before I have you arrested." "Sit down, Trevor," Jade said, her voice carrying an authority that made both of them freeze. "Both of you. You'll want to be sitting for this." Something in her tone made them obey. Jade pulled out the folder Victor had prepared and set it between them. 6 days ago, my grandmother died. I never knew I had a grandmother until the night you threw me out, Trevor. She'd been watching me my entire life from a distance, keeping a promise she made to my mother. Then you abandoned me while I was pregnant, and suddenly her promise didn't matter anymore. What does this have to do with anything?" Sienna demanded, but Jade could see calculation in her eyes. "Everything," Jade said, opening the folder to reveal property deeds and financial statements. "My grandmother was Lillian Ashford. She built the largest private empire in the Western Hemisphere, and she left all of it to me. $400 billion in assets, Trevor. Properties in 67 countries. Companies that influence global markets." Trevor's face had gone white. He reached for the documents with shaking hands. "I own this building," Jade continued, her voice steady. "I own your office space. I own your warehouses. I own the investment firm that funded your startup. Your entire business exists because my grandmother quietly supported it, hoping you'd be good to me. You weren't." "That's impossible," Trevor whispered. "It's all documented," Jade said. She turned to Sienna. "And you've been engaged 6 times in 9 years and never made it to the altar. You're currently being sued for fraud by 3 ex-fiancés. You targeted Trevor thinking he was wealthy, but you have no idea that he's drowning in debt. His company is about 8 weeks from bankruptcy." Sienna stood abruptly, her mask cracking as she looked at Trevor. "Tell her she's lying." But Trevor couldn't speak. The truth was written across his ashen face. "Here's what's going to happen," Jade said, standing. "You're going to have your wedding. I'm going to leave. But starting Monday morning, every single one of your leases will be renegotiated at market rate. Your rent will triple across the board, which is still generous considering you violated your residential lease by moving Sienna in without permission." "Jade, please," Trevor said, desperation replacing his earlier arrogance. "We can work this out. I made a mistake." "Now you want to work it out," Jade said, and she felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just calm certainty. "6 days ago, you told me my pregnancy was my problem. You had me physically removed from our home. You humiliated me because you thought I was powerless." She walked to the door, then turned back. "I'm not doing this for revenge, Trevor. I'm doing this because you need to understand that actions have consequences. You threw away something precious because you thought you could upgrade. But you actually downgraded to someone who never cared about you in the first place." She looked at Sienna. "His broke. The investigators found evidence he's been cooking the books for months. You're about to marry a man whose company is collapsing. Congratulations, you finally got exactly what you deserve." The wedding happened, but Jade watched from her penthouse miles away for only a moment before turning off the livestream. She had more important things to do. What happened next shocked everyone. Jade didn't destroy Trevor's company. She restructured his leases to give him 6 months to get his finances in order, at fair rates rather than the subsidized ones Lillian had provided. She gave him a chance to prove he could survive without invisible support. "Why?" Victor asked when she explained her plan. "Because destroying him would make me just as bad as he is," Jade said, placing her hand on her belly where her daughter was growing stronger. "My grandmother spent 60 years building this empire, and she didn't do it by crushing everyone who crossed her. She did it by being smarter and better than her competition. That's the legacy I want to inherit, not revenge, but excellence." The story hit the media within a week. Abandoned pregnant wife discovers she's $400 billion heiress. But Jade refused all interviews. She had work to do. She promoted Naomi Chen to chief of staff and hired advisors who shared her vision for using real estate holdings to create affordable housing alongside luxury properties. She invested heavily in sustainable development and green technologies. Within 3 months, Ashford Empire was being discussed in business schools as an example of how massive wealth could create social good without sacrificing profitability. Trevor's company survived, barely. He and Sienna divorced 9 months after their wedding, ugly and public. Sienna got nothing thanks to the prenup Trevor had insisted on. Karma had a sense of humor. Jade's daughter was born on a spring morning 7 months after Lillian's death. She named her Iris Lillian Monroe, after the grandmother who'd loved her from afar and the flower that symbolized hope. Holding her daughter for the first time, Jade finally understood what Lillian had written in that letter. True power wasn't about money or property or revenge. It was about becoming so genuinely content with your own life that the people who'd hurt you became irrelevant. Within 2 years, Ashford Empire doubled in value. Jade established the Diane Ashford Foundation to provide housing and support for homeless women and single mothers. She returned to practicing architecture part-time, designing innovative affordable housing that won international awards. She found love again with Adrian Okafor, a fellow architect who'd known her before the inheritance and valued her for her talent and character. Their blended family was chaotic, loving, and everything Jade had once dreamed of. 5 years after that rainy night, Jade stood in her office overlooking the city she'd helped reshape. Trevor had remarried someone genuine, learned hard lessons, and stabilized his business at a smaller scale. Sienna had disappeared from public view. But Jade barely thought about them anymore. She was too busy building her own legacy. On her desk sat the last photo ever taken of Lillian, a woman in her 90s with sharp eyes and a knowing smile, standing before one of her buildings. Next to it was the letter Jade had memorized. True power isn't about revenge. It's about becoming so successful, so content, so genuinely happy that the people who hurt you become irrelevant. That's exactly what happened. Jade had taken the worst night of her life and transformed it into the beginning of something extraordinary. She'd been abandoned, betrayed, thrown away, but she'd risen to build not just an empire, but a life worth living. And that was the greatest triumph of all, living so magnificently well that the man who tried to break her became nothing more than a forgotten footnote in the story of her spectacular rise. The end. What she did shocked them, not with revenge, but with something far more powerful. Success so complete that their betrayal became meaningless. She proved that the best response to being underestimated isn't destruction. It's becoming so phenomenally successful that you make your enemies irrelevant simply by existing at a level they can never reach.